1991, Lloyd Avery's about 18 or 19. He does Boyz in the Hood, and he's famous, even though he had a very small part, but he's famous for, kind of like Dark Side of the Force reasons. Like, he's only existed in the movie to kill one of the good kids. He's the causes the main tragedy of the movie. And remember, this is like, as far as like an LA hood gang movie, Boyz in the Hood was the first. There were people in LA that would get his face tattooed, well, like from that scene where he's leaning over the car with the shotgun, but on the surface. They grew up in the upper middle class neighborhood. The father had some type of good job. The mother might have been a teacher or something. But his brother had some issues. His brother, I think, got in the rolling 60s and had some legal problems and did a little prison time, but then turned his life around. But Lloyd, after the movie, he gets associated with being a blood gang member just from the movie. And he starts hanging out in that neighborhood, the Jungles, which is where the Black Pea Stones were at. And that's the neighborhood that was featured in Training Day. In Training Day, they go in that neighborhood with all those apartments, ghetto subdivision, with these winding streets and all these apartment buildings. That's the Jungle. And even now, there's, Jungle has problems, but, in the 80s and 90s, it was definitely very infamous. So after he does that movie, crime in LA, just like in New York and in America in general, in the mid-90s, starts to go down significantly. But he's floating around, and by the mid to late 90s, he's living in the Jungle with QD3. I don't know why QD3 wanted to live over there. QD3 is Quincy Jones' son. That's who did the Beef series, which, if anyone who's mad at Vlad and Adam 22 for promoting Beef, remember, it was Quincy Jones' son that really formalized talking about actual violence in hip-hop and putting it out on those DVDs. If you don't remember that, look it up, Beef by QD3. So Lloyd Avery II is living with QD3 in the Jungle, and he gets a J tattooed over his eyebrow. And QD3 talks about bumping into people that had Lloyd Avery's face leaning over the car with the shotgun tattooed on it in the Jungles. And he starts wearing red, and I don't think there's any record of anyone knowing, or there's been no interview of anyone saying who jumped him in or whatever, but he got Jungles tattooed over his eyebrow. I would imagine that must have meant he joined. I don't know, maybe if you just live in that neighborhood, you can get that. I don't know if that's a gang thing or not. I don't know. But he gets that over his eyebrow, but he starts exhibiting signs maybe of some mental illness, which goes back to my earlier point of, like, acting seems kind of weird to me. Not saying it's bad. It just seems that could be, if you can really jump around to playing drastically different people, you could be susceptible to that. It could be a sign of it. So anyways, Lloyd Avery starts exhibiting some signs of mental illness. He's doing movies, but he's arguing with friends. He's, and he grew up in this, he started acting, I think, before Boyz in the Hood. So he was part of this scene of, like, wealthier kids who were having parties at mansions when no parents are home. That's a thing in LA of, like, kids can get really upper income kids or just industry kids or even middle class kids. There's a lot of drugs here and a lot of excess money and a lot of out of town people floating around, and the presence of Hollywood definitely does something to the spirit of the city. Can get kind of weird here. And maybe he got into drugs or something when he was young, so he gets caught on a movie set smoking sherm. He spazzes out on sets, threatens to kill. Well, with his newfound gang persona, he starts intimidating people on movie sets, certain people, threatening female hairdressers, stealing stuff. He gets cast in that Master P movie, Lockdown. If you remember that, it shows one of those movies that's on BET like twice every Saturday. he was such a problem on that set, he ends up getting kind of kicked off the movie. I guess he still is in the movie for some scenes. So they're shooting this movie Lockdown at the State Penitentiary of New Mexico, which was an old prison that had been abandoned because it had been the site of a horrible riot. So now it was being used for film sets. And one day he spazzes out and she's yelling at this hairdresser, and the tattoo artist is there, this big guy, hits him. And mind you, he's dressed in a prisoner's outfit because he's playing a prisoner. And like I said, this was the old State Penitentiary of New Mexico that, because there was a riot there with like 30 people killed, it was like worst prison riot ever. Or, well, maybe second to Attica. The new replacement prison is just like a half mile away. And Lloyd Avery gets punched. He's probably been smoking sherm, and he's dressed as an inmate. He runs away from the set, I guess, to get away from this guy who hit him, but he's also flipping out. And he gets to the new real prison with his prison inmate outfit on from the movie, and he starts climbing the wall into the real prison. And of course, the prison guards, train their rifles on him. They don't know, is he an inmate that escaped, is trying to get back in? And luckily, the head of security on the Master P Lockdown movie was like a Navy SEAL, and he comes and somehow talks to guards from shooting him. Really bizarre. I mean, that's such a strange sequence of events that he's dressed as a prison inmate, flips out, and tries to climb into a prison. Maybe it symbolizes that, the craziness in his mind. He knew he wanted to be away. Some prison can be very comforting to some people if you're in a very chaotic life. It's like more relaxing and calmer than home. And I can see how, and I had far from the wildest household or anything like that. People have much worse than me. So I can see how some people want to be in jail because it's more relaxing. So that incident happens, and he goes back to L.A. And there's a shopping plaza over in that same community of where Vista View and the Rolling 60s, Baldwin Hills, all that kind of blends together. But it's in like this little forgotten little area. It's called Santa Barbara Plaza. It's old. I think it's been torn down now. It's probably part of the Wilshire line or the Crenshaw subway line redevelopment. So this is this little forgotten shopping plaza called Santa Barbara Plaza. So he's living in this shopping plaza kind of thing. And there's like just a bathroom in the hallway. Different people use it. He's maybe doing some robberies. He's stealing. It's 1999. He was selling a little drugs, probably because something weird happens in the Santa Barbara Plaza. Well, it only makes sense if it was some little drug dispute. Two people a little older than him are sitting outside there, and he gets into some type of argument with them. It's said that it was a drug debt, so maybe they owed him, $100 or something for crack. He kills them both. There was shell casings taken into evidence. So that happens, but he doesn't get taken into custody. And then something else happens there. There was an Islamic center in the Santa Barbara Plaza, Nation of Islam, actually. He gets into it with them. And not clear about the details of that, but he throws something through their window, and they go to attack him, and there's shots fired, and someone gets killed. I don't know, did he have people with him, like a gang, or I don't think it was a Nation of Islam member that got killed. Somebody supposedly gets killed or at least shot, and he has to get the hell out of that neighborhood. Nation of Islam is on him. He's floating around still, and then he books another movie. He books a movie called Shot, which is kind of weird. This white director kind of bases it on his own life. It's a low-budget movie about him going into a neighborhood in South LA to make a documentary, and then he gets mixed up with some gang members and, blah, blah, blah. So he books that movie and he shoots it, and then he gets taken into custody. So he goes on trial. there's shell casings associated with another drive-by and an Islamic Nation of Islam center shooting, but he doesn't get charged with that. Case is a little shaky, but he doesn't have an alibi, and the witnesses are all crackheads, but they are witnesses. He gets convicted. He goes into prison, and he seemingly is almost happy he goes to prison, because the prison, he goes straight to Pelican Bay. I don't know, I guess because he had double life, and I guess he was a validated gang member or something, and then also he was still a little bit famous, so for whatever reason he went straight to Pelican Bay. So he becomes a devout, born-again Christian, and he's like really active in his Christianity, not like in a fake way, because he's not getting out. And the Reverend there talks about him being very devout and serious. And if you thought the story was weird up till now, it's another middle-class black family in west part of South L.A. called the Robys, and they have a son, Kevin, pretty sure that's his name. Kevin Roby gets into the occult in the 90s, maybe 89, 91, something like that. And he decides he's going to open a portal to another dimension and bring the evil power of Satan into himself, because he is the rightful ruler of the universe, not God. Kevin Roby is the supreme ruler of the universe, but he has to open a dark portal, so he RAPEs his own sister and red rums her as well, his own sister. So he's at Pelican Bay when Mr. Avery II gets there. Mr. Avery starts calling himself Baby Jesus, which, of course, you take on a name like that, this again sounds like a mental illness. And Mr. Roby calls himself the Satanic Christ. It's determined that it's a good idea by the prison staff to house these guys together. Now, who knows? Maybe Lloyd Avery II, as I said, he had all type of, he was attacking people on movie sets. He slapped one of his friend's mothers. Like, he would violently assault his own friends and maybe family members. He would act out violently and aggressively. Perhaps he did something to a guard. There's no record. We don't know. So he's in there with Satanic Christ. And he misses a couple of counts. Now, you would think in a maximum security prison, all the inmates, if they don't count somebody, but they're locked in cells. They're supposed to stand by the door, but, if they don't, what are the guards going to do? Run in everyone's cell? There's nowhere for them to go. He lays in his cell dead for 38 hours. Satanic Christ, according to him, while they're having a religious argument, he gets sick of Avery trying to convert him to Christianity. He unalives Mr. Avery, draws a pentagram with Avery's blood, and lays him in the pentagram. Pentagram is a 5-pointed star associated with devil worship. And Avery lays there for 38 hours until he's discovered. And the Satanic Christ confesses to it. Satanic Christ is around. I didn't really want to put these guys. I mean, he's just a crazy person. Hearing him talk. If you want to hear him talk, if you're interested in this, just Google Satanic Christ interview Spotify. It's somebody with the crime podcast interviewed him from prison. He talks in a very light, regular voice, but I mean, he's totally crazy. And he said that the murder of Mr. Avery was a warning to God. A warning to God that he was the ruler of the universe. That's what Mr. Roby said. So, far stranger than fiction, far more disturbing. If this was a horror movie, it would be too much. But unfortunately, it was real. Human beings can do some strange things. Not saying him being an actor made him do this. It's just in the seed of creativity often lies madness. And Lloyd Avery turned into a kind of a monster, and then he got put in the cell with the even worse monster as something monstrous happened. So that's Tales from the Hood horror movie from Gangland, LA. Al Prophet, American Dope.